Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. John and I, myself, Aaron, we are back to do our Week 12 reactions. Gosh, we're at that point of the season where I'm like kind of forgetting the week real fast, but it's Week 12 we just finished. Now we're heading to Week 13. How was your holiday, John?
It's pretty good. Bummer that the Cowboys lost, but overall I'd say it was not too bad.
All right, well, we'll get into that game momentarily. First, we got to start off though with one of the first Thanksgiving game. Probably won't have much to say on this one, but we got to go over it anyways. Chicago Bears beat the Detroit Lions 16-14, game-ending field goal by Andy Dalton. Just another gut punch for Dan Campbell and the gang as they are still winless and still searching for their first win of the 21/2022 season. Any thoughts on this game, John?
Uh no, not really. Just not a whole lot that went in here. DeAndre Swift, I don't know if he got hurt during this game or before it, but Jamal Williams became a pretty big factor in this one for the Lions, and he might have to be moving forward. Uh Overall though, the Lions are the Lions. They did their thing, and for the Bears, yeah, and I know the Lions, like they're scrappy. They get in a lot of these close games, but I think it's never really a good look to barely beat the Lions, no matter what team you are. So for the Bears, pretty rough game, even though they won.
Yeah, granted, Andy Dalton's first action in a few weeks, he looked okay. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think we saw obvious lack of talent on both sides in regards to the Lions. I mean, Jared Goff, you look at the numbers, Jared Goff had an okay game, 21 for 25, efficient, 2 touchdowns. Ground game was okay. Swift did play a couple of snaps in this game. He had 3 carries for 0 yards. I'm assuming, that did that. But Goff did fumble. But it's like you said, it wasn't a very clean NFL game. I think it's two teams that are probably going to be picking in the top 10 in the draft. Definitely the Lions. We'll see about the Bears. But yeah, in a way, kind of glad it was the early game, just because I feel like the early game isn't really watched, or looked at. It's probably why they stuck it there. So yeah, I really don't have much else to say about this game. Good one for the Bears. They're still technically in the race, and then Lions. I think we all know they're mathematically eliminated. So, enough on that game. Now we're getting over to probably. I think they said it was the most watched game in NFL. One of the most watched games, right? I think in NFL should he did.
They said it was like the most watched one since 1997.
Yeah. So So apparently a lot of eyes on this game. The Cowboys, obviously, that's why they're America's team. A lot of eyes on them. Unfortunately, though, for John and everyone else that was rooting for them. Cowboys lost to the Raiders in overtime, 36-33. So yeah, John. I mean, take it away. What? How do you feel about this game?
This game, no matter who you're rooting for, even if you're just a casual fan, was probably pretty frustrating to watch because both sides committed an immense amount of penalties. There was over 200 penalty yards total, 14 penalties apiece. There's just a lot of sloppy football. The score 36-33 went to overtime. It was a competitive game for sure. As a Cowboys game, or as a Cowboys fan, this was like the most stressful game of the year for me because it felt like the whole time they were like so close to making like the score, even, but then they'd like wouldn't do it. And then the Raiders would be like, they're so close to making a drive happen and they wouldn't do it. And so just this, it was a true back and forth throughout the whole thing. But at the end of the day, I think the real defining factor here was Anthony Brown for the Cowboys. He had 91 penalty yards by himself, committed, I think, I don't know if he committed all four. There was 4 pass interference calls on the game. I believe he committed 3 of them uh, on the Cowboys defensive side. So, yeah, there was an even amount of penalties, but because of those pass interferences, the Cowboys had more penalty yards. They gave up bigger plays like that. And simply put, they also eliminated some of the Raiders' mistakes by just not being able to cover anything deep. Deshaun Jackson had a really big day. Statistically, maybe not, but a lot of those pass interference calls were on him deep because Anthony Brown just simply couldn't keep up. So he'd grab him or, just simply just wouldn't turn around. So yeah, I know that after the game, a lot of the attention was towards that penalties, and McCarthy talked about how he's going to talk to the NFL, and there's just a lot of attention put on the penalties. But I think that if you ask anyone in the Cowboys locker room, uh, any of their leaders for the most part, they would probably say that they didn't lose that game because of their penalties. They lost because they just didn't play well enough. And that's really all that you can say. Your team put up 33 points, your defense allowed 36. Um, honestly, I think there was only 2 penalties in the whole game. And I'm only talking about penalties so much because, once again, there was just a lot, and that sort of is the overarching narrative. There was only 2 penalties in the whole game that I thought were wrong. And that was one on the Raiders, which was a snap infraction. The center bobbed his head up and down, which I think it was Romo that was I can't remember who was commentating the game. I think it was Romo. And he said that pretty much just like a center does that on every single snap. So if that's the case, I don't understand why they would call a snap infraction there. He said that signals to the offense that he is going to snap the ball. And also, like, you look between your legs to sort of, get the judgment of where the quarterback is. Distance.
I also I didn't see that. I must have been in between because I was traveling and stuff. But I did when I did see the game. I mean, in other games, some Snake Signers, they do the weird head twitch thing. I've always noticed, and they never get called for that. So I'm assuming that's also a signal. So I know it's different than the bob, but it's still it's like I get what you're saying. It's a little bit nitpicky.
There's signals that every team does. And over the Cowboys, Zach Martin, the right guard, he throws his arm out to tell the center to snap it. And there's just signals for every team. Apparently with the Raiders, what their center does, he just looks between his legs and puts his head back up. And they called a foul there, or a penalty there. I don't think that's a penalty. And then the other one on the Cowboys, it's tough because based on the rules, or sorry, not based on the rules. That's a different one I'm about to talk about. It was roughing the passer on the defense. I can't remember who specifically they called it on. It was a play in which Derek Carr fell down and nothing really happened. I truly don't know what they were saying was roughing the passer, but once again, those are the only 2 penalties that I really felt were wrong, and it was one on each team. So I know a lot of people might complain this game was poorly officiated. I thought just both teams were incredibly sloppy, and simply put, when the Cowboys are that sloppy, you can't blame yourself, or you can't blame the refs for losing. You can only blame yourself. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I just want to add in regards. It's not just this game. It's been an issue. It's been an issue more and more as the years, especially this year. It seems like a lot of over officiating, especially the roughing the passer call. It's just sometimes it annoys me too, because sometimes the defender is thrown into the quarterback by an offensive lineman. The momentum's carrying him, runs into him, pushes him down, and you can see a lot of these defenders, especially now in week 12, they're trying to lay off, but they've been pushed by a 300-pound, very strong offensive lineman, and their momentum is carrying them that way. They run to the quarterback, and it's even though you got to stop, or you didn't get to stop. It's a free 15. That does annoy me, and it's gonna annoy me more. I feel like too, because it happens every year in the playoffs. All these calls, they're gonna get it's gone. So it's just annoying because especially as a team. I would be annoyed if I was a coach or a team just going from one to the other. Can we decide? Are we going to let us be physical, or are we going to call this a nitpicky game? Because even last year's playoffs, there was a mix of the two. So I think that's something and then regardless, hopefully taunting hasn't been the big issue that we thought it was. It turns out this roughing the passer, especially over the years, has just gotten more and more complex. And now it's like every time you see a quarterback fall down or hit, you don't know as just a football watcher, especially if it's your team on defense. You're sitting there crossing your fingers, don't throw the flag. So it's something that's been annoying me this season.
This one was weird too because it looked like Derek Carr just kind of tripped and then sort of fell into one of the defenders, but it was like his thigh. I'd have to go rewatch the play to see if I could find anything else. But watching live, like I said, I saw nothing. And so it just felt weird. And then this is unrelated to those penalties because this one is in fact a penalty and it's based on the rules. But I'll talk about this one more once we get into the Colts Buccaneers game. But one thing that does frustrate me a little bit with the way the rules are set up is that if a quarterback throws an underthrown pass, it's actually really easy for the wide receiver to draw pass interference.
Yes, or
We saw
overthrown.
this
I was about to say that next.
or overthrown. Yeah. So it sort of rewards a bad throw. The underthrown ones are a lot easier to see because oftentimes the receiver has to turn around and fight through the corner's body. And when that happens, it's a weird situation. If you watch the game, you saw it on the final pass interference against Anthony Brown that set up the Raiders in field goal range to kick the game-winning field goal. The pass was underthrown. I think it was Deshaun Jackson. He had to fight through. He basically turned around, had to try and fight through Anthony Brown's body. Anthony obviously is not facing the ball, so he doesn't know what's happening. So he never turns, and it smacks him right in the back of the helmet. He didn't even really make a whole lot of contact. It was just him kind of staying there. I think his hands were up, and Deshaun sort of runs into him because the ball is underthrown, and that's pass interference. Once again, the way the rules are written, that was a good call. It was, in fact, pass interference. But I don't know. I think it's weird that, once again, there's just a lot of ways to protect the offense. And it's like, what is a corner supposed to do there when the throw is bad like that? How are they getting penalized for basically a bad throw in which a receiver initiates contact with them? I don't know. I think it's weird, but that's how it's written. And once again, the Cowboys played sloppy, so I'm not going to sit here and blame it on that one call. If we want to talk about specifics of how they played sloppy, when they kicked the field goal to force overtime, Dak missed the throw right before that to Schultz that should have been a touchdown to end the game.
Sorry, and then just all I have to add in that game, just real quick too, in terms of the actual game. Also, just special teams. It's a closer, such a close game. Came down to that. I mean, you did have the kick return, but then you have Greg Zuerlein missed a field goal and also missed an extra point. So those things, it's like basketball with free throws. It comes back to bite. Come back to bite you in games like this, unfortunately. But yeah, it's one of those things. The overthrow, underthrow stuff where they get the free pass interference. Like, I hate that. If anything, I just don't understand what happened. Remember the rule, like it was a couple of years ago, especially, it would be considered. Refs would say that it was uncatchable. So maybe it should be defensive holding instead. I could see, I feel like those should be more defensive holdings. Get the 5 yards, first down, okay, as opposed to the free 20, 30 yards just because you threw it in the double or triple coverage and someone just ran into someone else. It's so, and I imagine in the playoffs it's probably going to be like that. Fans like us, or not like us, but fans in general are going to be expecting these calls. They're not going to happen, and then it's be like, oh, like what's wrong with the officiating? Well, no, they've just swallowed their whistles now. And so, but yeah, the officiating is a whole other, man, we can talk about that all day. But anyways, yeah, in regards to the Dallas game, it really
Am I lagging?
You lagged it for a second, but for the most part, you're good.
Okay.
But anyways, yeah, it just came down to, unfortunately, special teams and things like that. And I would only other tip I'd like to add, maybe I'd want Dallas to be more patient with the run game, but I understand you're trailing most of the game. You had to kind of play catch up. So you're kind of putting up behind that way. So that's not even like, that's just more of a grievance. I don't know.
I mean, on that, they haven't really been able to run the ball efficiently the last 4 or 5 games. Like it's been a little concerning at this point. I don't know the answer to that. But yeah, it's definitely something to look at because like you just said, they're not being patient with it. It's not really working when they are doing it. And so they sort of just go out of it. And then on the Zuerlein thing, the Cowboys have lost. I won't go too long into this. The Cowboys lost to the Buccaneers by 2 on opening night, and now the Raiders by 3. In those 2 games combined, Greg Zuerlein missed 11 points worth of kicks, and they lost by a point margin of 5 in those 2 games. So, yeah, I mean, I like Greg Zuerlein, but I think it's time to have the kicker conversation because those are 2 direct games that you can say if Greg makes 1 field goal in both games in regular time, the Cowboys probably come out with wins in both of those.
Alrighty, so that is Raiders-Cowboys. Spent a long time on that, but I think the officiating stuff is very important to notate and talk about because it's just been prevalent all season. Something that we really haven't touched on just because it takes time. But anyways, yeah, just keep an eye on that going forward in whatever game y'all are watching out there. But going to the nightcap for Thanksgiving/Thursday games, Buffalo Bills, they took care of business against the Saints 31-6. Josh Allen looked pretty good. I think the story of this game was Saints just on offense, just no Alvin Kamara, and especially whichever Simeon, it just was rather unimpressive. Obviously, they didn't even score till the fourth quarter. And then for the Bills, I don't want to say their offense is solved, in my opinion, but yeah, like, it was better. It was better than it has the weeks before. A little more creativity in the pass game. A little more patience with the run as well, but they did have a lead for most of the game too. So I don't think there's much to take in for the Bills. Obviously, losing Tre'Davious White is pretty huge because their secondary was already kind of iffy. They're pretty well coached, but I think obviously if you're gonna have to play man at some point in critical situations, especially in the playoffs, and you're gonna need a Tre'Davious White because after that, I'm not really confident in the corners after them to play man. And especially in the AFC with Kansas City and just teams that have good receivers, which is basically almost every team. So, but yeah, do you have anything to add in regards to the nightcap, John?
I mean, it's just tough for the Saints because of the injuries they have on offense. Obviously, Michael Thomas hasn't been playing this year. Then Jameis goes out, and now Alvin Kamara isn't there, and then Mark Ingram in this one's not there, and so they're just there. There was a lot of injuries in this one, and so it sucks for them. And they're playing a really good defense. The reports that I've read are that Taysom Hill is going to be the starting quarterback this Thursday. So that's something that you and I have both been wanting the Saints to do. I'm a little bit surprised it took this long. They've now lost 4 straight, and that's no shot at Trevor Siemian, but you know what he is, and at least with an offense where you just don't have a lot of receiving talent out there, maybe you put a guy like Taysom in who has some running value, and you can try to run stuff sort of similar to what Philly is doing right now, which is a very run heavy scheme that is working for you. And you just hope your defense can, help you out on the other side. For the Bills, like you said, I don't really know what to take away. I feel like the Bills it's just been really inconsistent this year. Some weeks you feel like they're going to go crazy and they do. And then other weeks they just come out flat. Once again, I wish they had more of a run game. Even though they did run it 32 times, both Devin Singletary and Matt Breida, who are the running backs, averaged 2.9 yards a carry each. That just doesn't feel good enough, long term, sustainably, and so that just puts so much pressure on their passing game. Josh Allen, and I think that's what forces him into mistakes where he's throwing interceptions because they just can't really move it on the ground unless Josh is the one running it. So I'd love to see, and this is not something they can really fix this year, but even this offseason that they really put a heavy emphasis on trying to get a balanced attack because I think the Bills have so many great pieces and they're so close, but I just think that lack of diversity, on offense has hurt them. In this game, it didn't. But once again, I don't really know what to take away from this one. Although it is impressive that they were able to beat a Saints defense, which has been pretty solid on the year. So we'll see. Once again, I don't know how to feel about the Bills right now because I think most people sort of had the expectation that they're in the contender status. But we'll see how this team bodes in the playoffs, especially without Tre'Davious White. That really sucks. And for the Saints, the playoff hopes are starting to slip. So let's hope that Taysom can, change things.
Alrighty, so now on to the Sunday games. Going to start in the AFC North, where the Cincinnati Bengals took care of business against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 41-10. So, John, what were your thoughts on this divisional matchup here?
A bit shocked. I thought it was incredibly possible the Bengals would win. I think I picked the Steelers. I can't remember what the spread was. The Steelers were underdogs. I know that. But I figured if the Bengals did win, it would not be by this much, and it certainly wouldn't be 41 points worth of offense. Like the Steelers, I mean, their defense has really been the reason that they've been competitive, the reason they win games. And I think they were missing Joe Hayden in this one still, but they had gotten back Minka Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt. So I don't know. I figured their defense would at least keep this one competitive, but they just did not. Joe Mixon went crazy. T. Higgins had a massive game. Like the Bengals just flat out dominated them. I think they had a pick 6 in there. Like they balled out, and unfortunately for the Steelers, their offense sort of came back to earth. Sort of similar to what they were doing at the beginning of the year that had everyone really disappointed in them. And yeah, just really disappointing performance from the Steelers. I don't know what happened with Najee in this game. He only had 8 carries. I don't know if it was that just because they got behind so fast that they stopped running the ball. I don't know if it was anything to do with injury. I don't know. I didn't watch this one. I just saw some highlights, and yeah, Bengals just absolutely dominated them.
Yeah, I don't think he was injured. Sorry, it was one of those games too. I watched the rewatch, so I didn't see all the stuff. But yeah, I was just as shocked as you were, and I think the biggest shock and probably the main reason they won was Bengals were very patient with the run game,
Yeah.
and it worked too. It's not that they were just patient; it was working. I mean, Joe Mixon had a great day, and they were able to build off that. I mean, Joe Burrow only had to throw the ball 24 times, and that's how many completions Ben had himself. And it's just yeah, and I think that's surprising because for the most part, especially at the beginning of the season, Bengals were winning via the air, especially because we all felt that I think everyone just general knowledge in the NFL like oh man their O line's not that great, but they had some young pieces and they're starting to kind of come together and I always forget their head coach's name, Zach Taylor, I think, right? Zach
Yeah.
Taylor, from the maybe McVay tree of McShanahan. So it was good to see them actually get a run game going, which is very key to all of their philosophies. And I'm interested to see if it makes them more dangerous going forward. And for Pittsburgh, yeah, it's like you said. I mean, Big Ben came back to earth this week, and they got behind early, and it's just Pittsburgh's just not built to get in a shootout right now. I mean, I know they did last week, but it's not realistic to expect that every week from Big Ben at this point in his career. And we'll see what happens with Pittsburgh going forward because one of my friends is a Pittsburgh fan. We're in a group chat, and he shared there's been a lot of criticism from previous players. There's I think Minka and Claypool wanted to change at practice. Claypool wanted like music or something, and then like there are
So,
people calling
did
out.
you hear those comments? I wanted to ask your opinion, but you can finish.
Listen, I mean, Mike. Mike Tomlin is an established head coach, and the Pittsburgh fans want him gone, and I kind of understand because like you're at that weird stage right now where you're good but not great, but not bad enough to tank. I don't think you get rid of Mike Tomlin. I think that's the way Mike Tomlin is. Like they're a gritty physical team. They're from Pittsburgh. It's just been their identity, and it helps them. It's helped them, have success, especially with Mike Tomlin. That's been his MO is we're going to be a tough team and run the ball, play defense, things like that. And maybe Mike does need to change things up, practice wise. But I've always thought Mike Tomlin was a very good players coach. I always felt that way. I mean, he handled Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, and we saw until when they finally left, like how they were. You know what I mean? So and then also there, former players calling out like Devin Bush. I'm not sure that's what you're going to mention too. It's just, I think Pittsburgh fans and former players just got to get used to reality. A little bit of a transition period, but not really. I'm not sure how much money they have in free agency, but I mean they can grab an Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, heck, even a Matt Ryan, and draft a few solid pieces. I think they'll be right back in the mix. It's just right now, not that quarterback's most important position, but Big Ben's not what he is. It's just that, and the defense. T.J. Watt's been in and out. It's just been a tough year for Pittsburgh. I think it's just so it's hard to really get a gauge for. But I don't think they'll make the playoffs this year. At this point, it seems like they're kind of falling apart. But I think they'll be a very intriguing team this offseason. But what are you going to say?
I just thought it was interesting because there's been a lot of online debate about what Chase Claypool said. I know earlier on our Twitter account, I actually responded to some people, and they all had very interesting responses. I don't. It was just interesting because I think a lot of people were using it as an opportunity to trash Mike Tomlin, to be like, oh, like he hates his players, he doesn't want them to have fun, like blah blah blah. And Chase Claypool, like he's a young guy, and he even said in his quote, he was like, "Listen, Tomlin's been doing this longer than me, so maybe he would know better than I do." So he like left that door open, but I don't know. I thought it was interesting because like your team's 5-5-1. and you're like the way that his comments were, and I'm not gonna say like this is what he actually meant, but it came off as like, well, we're losing because we're not having a lot of fun in practice. Like I think that's sort of what the message that people took away from him. I'm not gonna say that's what he meant, because I don't think that's what he's trying to say. I don't even know what the question was. I think maybe the way the question was worded, it made it to where that's how his response was. But that's sort of the narrative that came out of that, and the response from former players and even current players like Cam Hayward, one of the leaders on that team. He responded and said, uh, "When I heard him say that, I hope he was kidding because as soon as he said it, I was literally about to rip the speaker out. That is not what we need right now. It's X's and O's and it's execution." And that's my thought is like, listen, if people on the Steelers are worried about having fun right now, like go win. Like that's fun. I don't know. That's just my thought. That's what I assume Mike Tomlin thinks too. Is hey, we need to focus. This is practice. We need to lock in on what we're doing. We don't need to be dancing and doing, singing lyrics and all that stuff.
Hey,
And so
listen,
I don't know.
they got off to a great start last season doing that. They didn't start it this season, so maybe they need Juju back and just that inspiration.
No, the
Just
TikToks brought them down. The dancing on the logos in the field is
it
what their
eventually brought him
downfall
down. You
was.
do it for like a few weeks and then you stop. Yes, it gets them over. I'm just kidding, but
Karma will always strike. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting that a lot of people got really up in arms about this. And then Tomlin's response I thought was pretty funny. He just said, he was like, listen, Chase is a wide receiver, so I'll let him do his job. And I'm a coach, so I think I'll do my job. And I think that's a pretty fair work distribution. I thought he took it sort of lighthearted. It wasn't anything serious, but I just think it's really funny that people take this online and for some reason got really pressed that Mike Tomlin did not play music in practice. People were yelling at me, telling me, well, Bill Belichick does it. And I was like, no, get over yourself. Like, come on.
I mean, it's worked for that, and I mean, I'm sure there are other teams that don't do it. But regardless, there's just a lot of things going on in Pittsburgh. Not just that, like I mentioned, the former players calling out Devin Bush, which I mean, I'm kind of a little slack. I mean, he's been just still coming off an ACL injury. A lot of, I mean, like we mentioned, I mean, TJ Watt's been in and out, and he hasn't been 100%. And Minka's been kind of, I mean, last few weeks, out last week, back this week, and then you mentioned Joe Hayden's been out, and they do, and people need to realize too, because he's filling the Ryan Shazier role, and they asked a lot of that middle linebacker role. That's why their defense wasn't as good. When Ryan Shazier unfortunately got injured between him and then Devin Bush came in, who they traded up for. Remember his rookie year, had a really good rookie year, and then towards ACL last year, but they ask a lot of their middle linebackers. And to come back from an ACL injury too, there's I think it was like Arthur Moats, former linebacker. He was calling saying he wasn't, he was hesitating on such stuff. Well, yeah, I mean, he's still coming out from an ACL injury. He's still probably not trusting that knee. So, yeah, Pittsburgh's got a whole lot of things going on. It's just one of those things. It's just a lot to overcome and a lot of question marks. That's why I'm not entirely confident on them going forward. But nonetheless, good win for the Bengals. I think it was the first time, I forgot the stat, but first time they swept the Steelers in the series in a while. So, oddly enough, one of the teams I'm more confident in going forward. But enough on that game. Now we're going to move on to the Buccaneers and Colts, where the Buccaneers went into Indianapolis and beat the Colts 38-31. Colts had a good lead going to the second half. Unfortunately, I think turnovers and such happened. John, what are your thoughts in regard to this game?
It was an interesting one. It was a really back and forth one for the most part. This is another game where I want to talk about the underthrown pass leads to a pass interference. I can't remember who the receiver was, which team it even was. It was on offense.
Was it the Scotty Miller one? Although I thought that was fair. I'm not sure.
I can't remember. There was a pass interference where it was a little more. It was a lot more egregious than the one that happened in the Cowboys Raiders games, where the pass was like severely underthrown and the receiver sort of like dove into the corner's body to try and like make the catch, and they call defensive pass interference. Just once again, questionable ruling, and wish they would change that. But other than that, I mean, this game was just a complete back and forth, and I think. But it was just the second half that really turned the tide. The Colts came out and they were swinging early, but in that second half, I mean, the third quarter, the Buccaneers scored twice, 2 touchdowns, and the Colts didn't do anything. And then in the fourth quarter, Buccaneers kick a field goal. Then finally the Colts answer and get a touchdown. But then, Tom Brady does what he does and he leads the team down the field. Leonard Fournette had a monster game and they scored the game-winning touchdown. So really in the second half, the Colts got outscored 24-3 and they were in it for a long time. But the Buccaneers, I think, were just the better team on the day because they came out adjusted in the second half. The Colts were not able to answer to what the Buccaneers did in the second half.
Yeah, so I think just one stat says it all. I mean, turnovers, Colts 5, Bucks 2. I mean, especially the fumbles, just some killer turnover, especially in the second half. Frank Reich even addressed it. I know it's cliche, but it's true. I mean, like we saw, the Colts were in the driver's seat coming out of the second half, had a 10-point lead, had that touchdown at the end of half that really helped their momentum. But unfortunately, kind of killed their momentum, those turnovers. You give a good team, especially a Super Bowl winning team, life. They will come back, especially in the NFL. So that's really all I have to add there. Looking like stat-wise, I thought maybe they wanted them to run the ball more, but it is the Buccaneers. Very good run defense, and they did know when to pick. Frank Reich did have a good feel when to pick and choose to stick with the run and abandon it. But yeah, I think the Colts should have won this game. They were the better team for the most part of the day. But turnovers, it can kill it. It's just unfortunate. So yeah, I don't have much else to add there. You kind of hit it on the head. Good game for Leonard Fournette. And we're seeing, especially with Gronk back too, Gronk a really good run blocker and another reliable option in the pass game. He's really helped this Bucs team kind of get back on track. And then in terms of defense is getting healthier. I think they got Sean Murphy Bunting back, and apparently Carlton Davis supposed to be back soon. And sorry, last point too, regards to turnovers. I mean, I think one of the game-changing plays was the Antoine Whitfield interception. It was him and Michael Pittman one-on-one, and I think if you just look at size-wise, I think Pittman's 6'2", 6'3", pretty big wingspan, pretty big guy, and Winfield's probably 5'10", but 5'11" in shoes. He still went up and got it one-on-one. That was a huge play. So I think he's one of the emerging safeties. I just wanted to mention that. I know we were high on him on the draft. I especially was. Only fell away due to the injury concerns. So yeah, Buccaneers quietly kind of getting their mojo back into the season and keeping it in their division. Now going to the Panthers, as they unfortunately did not have a great day, as the Miami Dolphins beat them 33-10. Speaking of coming back to earth with Big Ben, Cam Newton really came back to earth here. Did not have a good day in the office, outside of one DJ Moore bomb, really. But anyways, John, what were your thoughts in regards to this game?
Rough game for Cam. Real rough one. 5 passes completed, 2 interceptions. I mean, he couldn't do anything, honestly. And that was really the story of the game, was the Carolina Panthers offense couldn't do much. Christian McCaffrey got hurt again, is now out for the season, back on IR. It was just a tough outing for Carolina. And then on the other side of the ball, I mean, the Dolphins didn't do anything spectacular outside of Jalen Waddle, who had just a monster game. I think he had 9 catches, 137 yards, and a touchdown. But other than that, I wouldn't say they necessarily did anything special. Their run game, they had 100 yards on the ground, but it was 39 rushing attempts, so they averaged 2.8 yards per carry. In the pass game, Tua, I mean, he had a really good game completion-wise, 230 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 receptions. Nothing special, just they came out and they executed when the Panthers did not. And I think that's really all you can pull from this one. Baltimore played good, sound, fundamental football. Miami played good, sound, fundamental football, and Carolina just simply didn't.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, I mean, kind of like the last game, turnovers again. A lot of early ones put Miami in favorable positions, and this Miami team is, especially with the way they have Tua playing, built to protect the lead. I think Tua only had one pass that went over 15 air yards, and that was incompletion. Even the big Jalen Waddle play that you mentioned was, I think, it was a 10-yard pass. Had our local Tua fan try to tell me release an apology statement. I was like, he didn't do anything this game. He was a good, and I think this is what he is. And not that it's bad, but I think he's just shaping out to be an Alex Smith. He's gonna manage the game. maybe make a throw or two downfield, but he's not really going to lose you games, but not really going to win you games. That's the point he's at right now.
And for the record, he did fumble twice in this game.
Yes,
he didn't lose either one, but he did fumble.
Yeah, so that was, and I'm not sure that's because also they registered another fumble, the one that they did lose to their center, but it looked like it was a botch snap. I'm not sure who that goes to, but that could be on both. That's something they need to iron out. Nonetheless, I mean, I don't mean to take anything away from the Dolphins, but and not because obviously they earned this game, but I mean Carolina didn't do themselves any favors like we mentioned. So it was a good game really for their defense and special teams. The block punt really got them going for a touchdown, and my guy Jalen Phillips had a really good game, 3 sacks. He's been kind of coming on as of late. Also, Javon Holland had a pick, one of their safeties, and then one of the rookie safeties.
Takeover for the Dolphins.
Yeah, so it's just weird. We'll see what happens with Brian Flores and the Dolphins because they have their whole situation going forward. But good for them and for Tua. Good confidence builder going forward with an efficient game. But now going over to their compatriots in the AFC East. The Patriots, they took care of business against the Tennessee Titans, 36-13. Mac Jones looked really good this game. And Titans, second week in a row, we kind of saw them miss Derrick Henry. John, what were your thoughts in regards to what occurred here?
I mean, Patriots doing what Patriots do. They're on an absolute roll right now. It doesn't seem like anyone can really stop them from the momentum that they're picking up. And like you said, I think for the Titans, it was just another game in which you miss a lot of your key playmakers. And it's just really unfortunate for them that, Julio's on IR. AJ Brown is on IR. Derrick Henry's on IR. Like pretty much all their key playmakers on offense are gone. And, what do you expect Ryan Tannehill to do in that sort of situation? We know that Ryan Tannehill, although statistically was putting up top 10 numbers last year, that was with Derrick Henry, who is the focal point of that offense. That was with AJ Brown, who is an amazing wide receiver. So you take all those things away, you strip that away from Ryan Tannehill, and it's just going to be tough for him to manage a game when it's really easy for it to get out of hand, especially since their defense isn't necessarily elite. So solid game for the Patriots. Once again, I wouldn't say they necessarily did anything spectacular on offense. They came out, they execute. That's what the Patriots do. And then, their defense, they held strong, which is, once again, that's just how they've been winning their games on this streak. They have a crazy point differential because their offense doesn't turn the ball over. They move it slowly down the field and they put it in the end zone. And if they can't, Nick Folk has been money on the year. And then their defense has just been balling out too. So yeah, just Patriots doing what they do. For the Titans, it's starting to get concerning, though, that all these injuries might come back to bite them, especially if the Colts had won that game. They could be looking at potentially, a slid that could lose them the division.
Yeah. I don't mean to beat the drum here, but Tennessee, 4 turnovers, New England 0. Yep. So, I mean, doesn't help when you give a team like Bill Belichick more opportunities, like John mentioned. And then I want to add on, I think New England's offense has slowly been getting better and better. I think they're opening up the playbook more. We've seen a few more explosive plays from them. We've seen Kendrick Bourne's been kind of coming on as of late as well. And then obviously their running game is still a focal point with their stable of backs. So, New England quietly but very steadily rolling in the AFC. And it'll be very interesting, their matchup with the Bills on Monday this upcoming week. But yeah, in regards to Ryan Tannehill, just real quick too. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. He's like in the Kirk Cousins class, where very good quarterback, but not like game-changing franchise guy. He needs, an AJ Brown, Derrick Henry, Julio Jones, and he can maximize their potential. But he's not going to do it. He's not going to make the Josh Allen, Mahomes, Rodgers plays on his own. Kind of like Kirk Cousins. He has Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and he that's why there's always a kind of in the conversation because he will still maximize what he can with them. But anyways, that is the Patriots and Titans. Now moving to John's division, where the Giants pulled off the upset on the day that they retired Michael Strahan's number, 13-7. John, what were your thoughts in regards to what happened here between your division rivals?
Considering the Cowboys had lost and they're on the skid and it started to look like, man, maybe the Eagles could put pressure on us. This was just a fantastic game to watch. The Giants, who I don't view as a threat at all, came out, upset the Eagles, destroyed them offense. Like, their defense destroyed the Eagles offense. The run game, it is what it is. They ran for 200 yards, but when they got in there, the Giants, they would bend, but they did not break. They did not allow the Eagles to put in the end zone, and they forced Jalen Hurts to start throwing the ball. And, Jalen Hurts is a solid quarterback, but I think you and I would both agree that he's not an NFL level thrower. And that leads to 3 crucial interceptions too. I know one of them was in the red zone. I don't know where the other 2 were. But yeah, just plain and simple. It was a good game for me to watch just because, if the Cowboys couldn't win, at least the guys who were in second place in the division couldn't either. And really ruined the momentum the Eagles had too, because they were riding a hot streak, and they couldn't get it done against the lowly Giants. So we'll see what it means moving forward. But yeah, if defenses, I think, I wouldn't say stop the Eagles run game, but if they can just make sure the Eagles can't convert that run game into red zone points, then you're probably going to win, especially if on the other side you can do yours. I know the Giants didn't put up a whole lot of points in this one, but the Eagles are going to face better offenses down the stretch that will be putting up more points.
Yeah, well, I don't mean to beat a dead drum, but it doesn't. Once again, 4 turnovers to 0. I'm just going to keep throwing that out there. But, I mean, you really hit the nail on the head in regards to the big picture. Eagles couldn't run the ball. And our concerns that we voiced earlier in the season, just not a complex passing offense, and B, like John mentioned, Jalen Hurts, not I wouldn't say an NFL level thrower. So, and I think he's dealing with he got banged up this game. I know Daniel Jones, I think his status is seriously in question for their next game Sunday. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, great for Cowboys fans, like you mentioned that.
Also,
yes.
random note, poor Miles Sanders. The guy, they don't want to give him a featured role. Before he got hurt, they just wouldn't run the ball. And now they run the ball a ton. He had 9 carries for 64 yards, which is all right. It's 7 yards carry. But then Boston Scott gets also 64 yards, but he got 6 more touches. And he also got the touchdown. So it's got to, as someone who has Miles Sanders in one of my leagues, it kind of sucks that this is the case, and this is without Jordan Howard. So what's going to happen when Jordan Howard comes back? It seems like the Eagles just seem to favor Boston Scott and probably Jordan Howard over Miles Sanders. And that sucks because Miles Sanders is very talented. And like I said, he averaged 7 yards a carry and wasn't getting involved. I don't know if it was injury related. He did just come out of, a pretty heavy injury that had him on IR. Because, I don't know, but poor Miles Sanders, and poor me for owning him in fantasy.
Yeah, I told you I picked him up in the league, and I started him, and it didn't work out.
I picked him up too, by the way. I didn't
literally, just to real quick paint everyone a picture, I had Odell Beckham, Jalen Waddle. I put Antonio Gibson on the bench, and they all had really good weeks. So, literally anyone else, yeah, that's unfortunate. It was unfortunate. So I feel your pain, and I'm sure Eagles fans feel your pain. But maybe this is a longevity move, to split carry, so he has a longer career. But yeah, maybe they make him the focal point. Maybe that'll help out improve the run game even more. But good win for the Giants, tough one for the Eagles as the Eagles. Now the Giants are kind of in the conversation for somehow the wild card or maybe even division, while the Eagles a little bit further out but still in as well. Going to this next game, which I imagine will be very quick. Falcons take care of the Jaguars 21-14. Cordero Patterson returns and they just force fed him again. John, anything to add in regards to this game?
No. I mean, Falcons they're just a weird team. It's hard to get a beat on them. I know the Jags aren't very good, but after the last 2 games in which the Falcons have put up 3 points combined, you didn't really expect this out of them. Once again, even though the Jags are a bad team, I don't know. I can't get a beat on the Falcons.
I don't think Cordero played in the last 2 games, so I mean, he is their focal point. He's getting a lot of the touches as a running back.
He played against Dallas. He did get hurt, though, in that one.
So, yeah. There you go. I mean, he's their only, especially with no Calvin Ridley. Kyle Pitts still learning the NFL. He's their only real difference maker at this point, on offense at least. So, good win for them as they continue to somehow stay in the middle of the league. Another game we might be going over quickly, the New York Jets, they get a win in Zach Wilson's return, 21-14. A little bit of a sloppy game on both sides. It's just, Jets. It's Jets Texans. It's kind of the game, how the game went. Any thoughts in regards to this one?
Once again, no. not a whole lot of thoughts. Two bad teams. Jets came out on top.
Yeah, I mean, both quarterbacks got sacked multiple times, both threw a pick. It, yeah, I don't really have any specific X and O stuff. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't watch much of this game, so
I didn't watch any of it.
not that
Didn't
it
even see a
doesn't even have any
highlight.
playoff really implications. I don't think they're technically mathematically limited, but basically they're limited. Like these two teams aren't going in. So,
Yeah.
go in for the Jets fans and for my guy Zach Wilson, and hopefully he can keep building off that success. Now going on to probably one of the shockers of the weekend in the AFC West, the Denver Broncos pull off the upset against the Los Angeles Chargers, 28-13. Your guy Pat Surtain had 2 picks. One was a pick six right off, which and I'll go real quick. I think that was just the game changer right there, 21-7. And once again, not really Herbert's fault, just off Eckler's hands, and unfortunately right into the hands of Patrick Surtain. Surtain runs it back, and that was pretty much game over at that point. This last thing I want to, in regards to Chargers, need to be more patient with the run in general, and just need more creativity. I mean, maybe they need to go pick up. They should have gone for Deshaun Jackson because they need someone to take the top off the defense, or even someone to go deep for Herbert to look at. If you watch most of their games closely, it's a lot of medium to intermediate stuff, and I don't know why, because you have Justin Herbert, who we all saw last year has a rocket of an arm, and we saw all the deep plays he did last year. Not as much this year. I know they have the few to Mike Williams, but the Pittsburgh one was really, that was like a 15-yard pass, but he just broken coverage. They just need more creativity there, because good team like Denver, division rival, they kind of had a beat on what they wanted to do. But what were your thoughts in regards to this rivalry game, John?
Good win for Denver. Their defense came up big. They forced 2 turnovers, both by Surtain. Maybe they forced more. I don't know if there's fumbles. Let me look at it real quick. Nope, no fumbles. So Surtain got the 2 interceptions, and they were both really big. One, obviously, he got a touchdown. The other one was in the red zone. He literally caught it in the end zone to prevent a touchdown and get his team the ball back. So big momentum swing for the Broncos on both of those. The run game worked. Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams both got involved. Still wish Javonte was getting more touches, even though in this one, Melvin actually was the superior runner when it came to yards per carry.
But Javonte was their leading receiver.
He was their leading receiver, but that was also in part to a 42-yard reception. Anyway, so good one for the Broncos. Offensively, they didn't really do a whole lot. I think they barely had over 300 yards total offense. It's where the Chargers, I mean, Herbert had 300 yards passing by himself, but once again, those turnovers were just killer. I agree with you. I think they could wait a little bit more on the run. I would like to see somebody else besides Austin Eckler get involved. I don't know. I mean, like, they have okay backup running backs, but it seems like, you could start to strike this balance and get multiple running backs, because Eckler's good, but Eckler is not, I don't know. I just want like a big bruising sort of back in that backfield to complement Eckler.
They need an AJ Dillon, this guy which we'll go over the pack game later. Guy that's gonna get you 3 or 4 yards pretty consistently, and tire out the defense. I know what you mean.
Yeah, because in a game like this, I mean, Eckler, he got 12 carries. It was 2.6 yards per carry. He only had 31 yards. He just wasn't being able to get a whole lot. And so that probably just means either the protection wasn't there, or he was just getting contacted early and couldn't fight through it. And so that's where it's like, man, I'd love to see this offense add a bruiser like an AJ Dillon, or somebody like that who can just be the complement to what Austin Eckler provides, because he's shifty, he's great in the receiving game, great route runner, and he has been getting the goal line carries and stuff like that. But it seems like they're just that one extra piece away from the run game that could really make this offense really unstoppable. And then, like you said, I think they need to work on the deep threat. Mike Williams early in the year was that. He isn't anymore, which is weird. I think out of like 6 receivers who caught a pass, he had so there were 6 leading receivers. He had the lowest average when it came to yards per catch. Eckler, Keenan Allen, Jared Cook, Josh Palmer, and Jalen Guyton all had double-digit yards per catch, to where he had 9.8, wasn't able to get it. So yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I would love to see some speed, because Mike Williams, he's solid, but he doesn't really have that speed like you mentioned. Jalen Guyton does, so maybe we could see him get
and that
more
was his role
involved.
last year. I just like I said, I'm not sure I don't want to criticize Joe Lombardi too much, but yeah, we saw him do that. I don't know why he can't do it this year. I don't know if they need to grab another guy. I'm not sure if Ted Ginn is out there somewhere. Probably he's always ends up somewhere, or is Philip Dorsett somewhere. You know what I mean? Just someone
Yeah.
to actually make the safeties back off in terms of speed, not just size. So, was that all you wanted to mention in regards to this one?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that if they get that too, I think that would help free up the game because your safeties can't sit so low.
And then open up the intermediate stuff for Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, where they really thrive, and
Mhm.
or Austin Eckler also help them in the run game. But anyways, that is Broncos win, keep their playoff hopes alive somehow, since they've been a weird one. Once again, it's a weird year. They're one of those teams that we can't really get a beat on. But now we're going on to my game, where my Green Bay Packers beat the LA Rams 36-28. I mean, I want to get your thoughts first before I go to mine. What were your thoughts in regards to this one?
Uh, I just thought the Packers were the better team, personally. Once again, I love how in the face of Jalen Ramsey and all the intimidation that he locks down a lot of elite receivers, the Packers always find ways against the Rams to get Devontae Adams involved. And Devontae, even like he had a couple of plays here where he just flat out beat Jalen Ramsey. So I love the confidence that Green Bay has offensively, that Aaron Rodgers has in Devontae, but also Devontae has in his ability to just beat Ramsey. But then also like making sure that they're not just sitting there and testing him over and over. Like they move Devontae a lot to try and see, are they in man? Are they in zone? What are they doing? Is Ramsey going to follow? Can we get him involved other places? Can we try to force the Rams into putting Ramsey and make him shadow Devontae? So I don't know. I just love the chess battle that the Packers play. Unfortunately for me, I benched AJ Dillon like right before, like 2 minutes before the game in fantasy. I still won my game, but I was really worried that with Aaron Jones back that he would soak up a lot of the work. He did not. I mean, he got 10 carries still, but AJ Dillon got 20 because they were leading, and so they let him run the ball a lot. Also, he got the receiving work and a touchdown. So yeah, just honestly, like I said, I thought the Packers were the better team. Matthew Stafford threw his third pick six in 3 weeks. And I think that really shifted the tide of the game too. It gave the Packers, I can't remember what the score was when it happened, but I think it put it to like a 2-score game at that point. I'm trying to pull it up to actually remember. No, yeah, it actually made it even bigger. So it was 30-17. I think it's like somewhere in the third quarter, right at the end of the third quarter. And we're looking like, okay, Rams, you got to run, you got to go down here, you got to score, you got to make this game closer. And then Matthew Stafford throws that pick six. It makes it 36-17. That's basically out of reach when you have 1 quarter remaining. They came back. They had a good half or a good quarter in the fourth. Odell, he did that double move to beat the guy who had, bit early and got the pick six. But it was just too little too late for the Rams. They just couldn't get their offense going throughout most of the game. To where the Packers, they were just consistent, steady. And they, once again, I imagine you're going to bring this up. I think they won the turnover battle too.
Yeah, I mean that one wasn't as big as just the one pick six. Wasn't much of a
There was
glaring.
a fumble though, right?
Well, because Green Bay fumbled, we fumbled, and the Rams fumbled as well.
I thought the Rams fumbled like really deep in their own territory.
it was on their second drive. Rashawn Gary, my guy, it was just a strip, basically a sack fumble. Like Stafford never saw him. Gary beat Whitworth and got a good, just punched the ball out and ran right into Preston Smith's hands. That set up the first.
Wasn't it like the 6-yard line too? So the Packers just got to walk it in for the most part.
It was like let's see. According to the ESPN site, it says Stafford was sacked at the Los Angeles 12, but in the ball, I guess the return was 9 yards, ish, or 5 yards. Sorry. Recovered at LA 6. So,
Regardless, it was.
yeah. I mean,
it was
yeah, and then,
close.
but yeah, I was about to say, yeah, because that was big. Because then Green Bay scores, and then for some reason, I know you had some tough. They had a tough start, but the Rams go for it on fourth down, then on their next drive and don't get it. They go 4-and-out and put the Packers right back in favorable position. But yeah, I think, and maybe because of the injuries in the running back room, they've been leaning on the pass game. But I don't want to sound like an old school broken record, but like part of the Sean McVay's success early in his career was having a good run game. And, unfortunately, Cam Akers got hurt earlier in the year, and I think Darrell Henderson's been banged up, and Sony Michel's still dealing with injury issues. I think he's had a knee issue he's been dealing with for a year or two now. So, um, regardless, I would like to see a little more out of the run game from them because I feel like they kind of abandoned it. And I know we got all these toys, and theoretically, once again, the Packers defense is kind of weak right now in terms of we're starting Eric Stokes and Kevin King, and obviously they were trying to pick on Rasul Douglas, but it's not working. And then also, I think a lot of criticism on Stafford, but criticism needs to go to the Rams defense. Maybe they need to be more creative, like John mentioned. Last year with Brandon Staley, they were doing a lot of creative things, especially with Jalen Ramsey. Sometimes he would just play man on one guy, and they do zone. Everyone else would play zone. It was just crazy things like that. I know we both were high on Raheem Morris, and especially with all the weapons they have now with Von Miller, who really hasn't seemed to be getting his footing here. Um, I don't know if they need to change of philosophy or something, but also they just came off a bye week, and it's just you expect to be more buttoned up and polished after a bye week, and they really weren't. So we'll see what happens for them, but I think that was a huge loss for them going forward because now I think they're technically 2.5 games back from Arizona for the division and technically first place. So they may not be playing in comfy LA. They may have to come to a Lambeau or somewhere they don't want to play in the playoffs. So,
And for the record, they didn't win a game in the month of November. They lost 3 and had a bye week.
tough. So they obviously got some things to figure out there. But now going on to the last afternoon game, San Francisco 49ers, their division foe. They beat the Minnesota Vikings 34-26. John, what were your thoughts in regards to this one?
Well, it was an exciting game. I don't know. Dalvin Cook got hurt. That sucks for the Vikings and Kirk Cousins. He was okay, but he just simply didn't do enough. And on the other side, I mean, what are you going to do? Deebo Samuel's killing it. Elijah Mitchell has a monster game. Brandon Ayuk was solid. I mean, the Niners, I don't know. They were the better team. I thought the Vikings would put up more of a fight here. I thought it'd be closer. But it wasn't, even though, it was only an 8-point game, so it wasn't terrible. But the Vikings, to end the game, they just were not very impressive. In the second half, they start off with interception, but then they responded with 2 touchdowns. They're like, all right, the Vikings, they're building momentum. They're going to keep this close. And to end the game, the next drive after that touchdown, which, it was actually, okay, it was a kickoff return. So their offense in the second half, they had their 1 touchdown, and they got the kickoff return. But then the next drive, Dalvin Cook comes out, fumbles. I believe that was the play in which he was injured, and the Niners picked it up. Then the Vikings had a long drive, 12 plays, went for it on 4th down, didn't get it, went downs. So they don't score there. And then another drive, 6 plays, once again, downs, don't score there. So their last 3 drives, fumble, downs. When the game was absolutely within reach, they couldn't come up clutch.
Yeah. In regards to the Vikings, it's just something I mentioned before. I mean, their offense, like John just mentioned, stalls at times, especially later in games, and it's just because there's not a lot of complex routes and just concepts on their offense. Their offense is kind of simplistic, kind of like Cleveland, a team we'll talk about later. If you stop their run game, and then they're too reliant on their guy beating your guy. They don't put their guys in schematic advantages. Also, and I think and that's just something I think they have to revisit if they ever do. I mean, we'll see because I don't want to. It's kind of a recurring theme. I think I just want to mention this. I feel like people think that coaching is like perfect in the NFL. It's not. I think that's something that one of the reasons why I want to make this podcast because like coaches aren't perfect in the NFL and the Vikings, like we mentioned before, kind of team, especially on offense. This is what we do, and we're just gonna do it every game. Maybe they'll have 1 or 2 creative, big game plan specific plays, but other than that, a lot reliant on their guys beating your guy. And fortunately for them this week, that didn't happen as it hasn't before. So Yeah, tough loss to the Vikings and critical win for the Niners as they try to stay alive in the playoff race. Fortunately, Debo did get hurt this game. Has a minor groin injury, 1 to 2 weeks. Once again, I don't want to. I feel like I say this every time there's a groin injury. I'm not even going to play him this week in fantasy. I'm not messing with that. Even if he plays, because it could easily get. It's feel like every groin injury gets re-aggravated, and trust me, I had one. Very minor though, and that thing was annoying. So keep an eye on that if you have Debo or just a Niners fan in general, because they've been riding him for the past few weeks in the run game and pass game, especially in the run game. But going on to the Sunday nighter for the AFC North, the Baltimore Ravens beat the Cleveland Browns 16-10. Baltimore turned the ball over a lot too this game. Lamar had 4 interceptions. He mentioned it himself, but they still somehow pull off the win. John, what are your thoughts on this divisional game?
All I could think about the whole time, first off, it was not a fun game to watch. I was just so wildly concerned with what Cleveland has become. They were an unstoppable run offense, and even for I think going into this game, they were the number one run offense in the league, and they couldn't run the ball. Kareem Hunt, I think, was their leading rusher with 20 yards. He had 7 carries for 20 yards. Nick Chubb had 8 carries for 16 yards, and Baker had 2 for 4. So they just couldn't run the ball. I mean, when you're the number one run offense in the league and you have 40 total rushing yards, that's just not going to cut it. And the fact that the Ravens gave them ample opportunity to win this game. As you said, Lamar threw 4 interceptions, but Cleveland just didn't respond at all. I know Cleveland fumbled twice, and Baltimore picked up both of them. And the rest of the game, they couldn't do anything with the ball, like I said. So I don't know. Maybe Odell wasn't the problem.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know what to say. I think Cleveland could have been a little more patient with the run. Once again, like, it's a dogfight of a game. I don't understand. Like, even Baltimore was still patient with the run. I mean, Lamar, granted, some of those may have been scrambles, 17 carries, but Devonta Freeman had 16 of his own. And let's be honest, Devonta Freeman and if I were to offer you Devonta Freeman and what's left of the Baltimore offensive line, as opposed and say you pick this or you pick Nick Chubb and or Kareem Hunt and the Browns offensive line, I think majority of the people will pick the Browns, just talent wise. And yeah, like I mentioned with the Vikings, it seems like Cleveland, if you can stop and slow the run game, they don't have enough in the pass game to beat you schematically and now talent wise. I mean, Jarvis had a good game, but other than that, I mean, none of their other wide receivers had I think I don't know who Jay Bradley is, but I'm assuming he's a wide. Jamarcus Bradley is, but I'm assuming he's a wide receiver. Yeah, he is. I mean, I don't think anyone really heard of him before then, but other than their tight ends or running backs, he was their next best receiver. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones, he had a meh game, but he's been kind of more of a 2/3 deep threat kind of guy. And I know they're missing Rashad Higgins. Maybe he's desperately needed, but yeah, I mean, like we mentioned, we went over the Baker stuff before, and yeah, he's injured, but I think Baker's entering. If I had to put Baker in territory, I'd put him in just below the Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill class of average-ish quarterback that's going to need talent or good scheme around him. He'll execute it. He'll be good. But even then, like, I'm not even sure because he hasn't been as consistent as a Ryan Tannehill or a Kirk Cousins. And let's be honest, too, health is a part of the NFL. It's unfortunate because it can be random. He hasn't really been healthy this year. And he's had issues in previous years with, a few minor injuries. So we'll see. But, it's a game that Cleveland should have won. In Baltimore, it seems to be the story of their season. They're just getting they somehow find a way to win. And kind of like Pittsburgh, their division rival, they embrace those kind of ugly wins because they love that. Was there anything else you wanted to add, or can we go to the Monday Nighter there?
That's all I got.
Yeah,
It was
boring game, boring
ugly
analysis. Like that's, and then unfortunately the Monday Nighter wasn't much better. Really, these premier night games are kind of been losing their steam. Remember earlier in the season, they were all amazing games, and now we're kind of coming back to earth. Anyways, Washington football team, they beat the Seattle Seahawks 17-15. John, what are your thoughts in regards to your division foe getting a win here?
For Washington, I think the key has been that they finally started to establish the run game over the last couple of weeks. Antonio Gibson is getting things rolling. He's getting involved. And earlier in the year, that just was not the case. And I think that's allowed their offense to take less risks. Taylor Heineke do not have to really force things and can sort of just play within himself. And it worked on this one for Seattle. It's a shame, really, what's happened to them because Russell Wilson, I would say, had a solid game. It wasn't anything crazy. I know statistically, like he looked like he did pretty good. There was a lot of times where it just seemed like he sort of just instantly rushed into a check down to like a tight end 5 yards upfield. Um, and so, like I said, I just statistically, I don't think that's really the case of like what the game like actually occurred in the game. And so I think there was just a lot of easy checkdowns that he took that didn't really convert into much offensively when it came to actually like moving the ball. And I think his finger, I know that he's said that it's not bothering him at all and that it's not impacting him, but I think it absolutely is. It looks like his mechanics are just weird. They look different. It looks like he's sort of second guessing himself when he throws the ball. Looks like he doesn't feel comfortable throwing it deep because of the extra amount of pressure he probably has to put on his arm, his hand, a tighter grip to really let it loose. And so I'm assuming maybe that's why he's just doing these quick little check downs. They couldn't get DK Metcalf really involved in this game at all. He finished the game with one catch for 13 yards.
That catch was like late in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think through the first half he had 0 targets. So not an exciting game. It looked like, the Seahawks with the late touchdown, maybe they could tie it up and force overtime. They couldn't get the 2-point conversion. It was intercepted. So yeah, all I could really think about the whole game was, man, it sucks that Russ got hurt and it looks like it's clearly affecting him. And number 2, it sucks that Chris Carson got hurt because they have no run game without him.
Yeah. I mean, I think this all so part of the stems into the fact. Okay, sorry. Let me restart. Let me start you with this stat. There's only one team to have 5 consecutive 3-and-outs on offense. There's only one team that's had that occur, and they've done it twice. And there's one of these two teams. I'm guessing. Yeah, you want to take a guess? It was Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah, and with all the weapons they have, you would think so. But they're the only team to have 5 consecutive 3-and-outs in 2 separate games this year. And
which, just on that, they are the worst team in the league at converting third downs.
Yeah, I think they're statistically the second worst offense in the league.
Yeah,
which is
now
shocking.
What's surprising is I think they're like top 7 in the league at first and second downs. Third down, they are the worst.
Yeah. And I may have mentioned this before, but once again, this is the thing, just not very creative on offense. Like John mentioned, now too reliant on talent. Like, can we get DK Metcalf a screen? Like, especially if Russell can't throw the ball there, can you get him a creative screenplay or something of the sort?
Can we get a sweep? Can we get something?
Yeah, it's like we're really seeing over in San Francisco, they're finding Kyle Shanahan finds multiple ways to get Deebo Samuel the ball and such. Like, can you do a little bit of that with DK Metcalf? And then, yeah, you hit. I was about to mention that too about Russell. He's obviously not 100%. Because he's just not really like we mentioned with the targets, like not even looking DK's way. And I think too, I saw another stat. They didn't have a first down for like 2 quarters, like a span of 2 quarters from like midway to the second to like in the fourth. So,
sheesh.
Yeah, and just watching the defense, like okay, but they're not like top tier. I think they're right in the middle now, especially without Chase Young. And heck, even early in the year, I would put them at the bottom. They kind of figured it out a bit here, but nonetheless, as if any Seattle fans out there, I think this is it, man. Like, I think Russell. If I was Russell Wilson, I would go. Like, they try to bring in guys, but none of them end up helping the offense be creative. They've been missing on draft picks and then trading away draft picks. And then they're really tight money wise. I don't think you'll be able to get many other people or free agents to come in just because money does talk. And right now, most of your money is vested in Russell Wilson, in Jamal Adams, who I know there's been criticism, but there's not much talent on the defense either. I mean, we mentioned their corners, their front four, nothing really impressive there. I know you still have, why am I playing? Bobby Wagner, but Bobby Wagner's kind of starting to hit the tail end of his career. He's, still above average, but once again, only like 1 or 2 good pieces there. And, Quandre Diggs, yeah. But other than that, I think we're going to see a lot of change in Seattle this offseason. I'll be interested to see how far they go into it. Does Pete Carroll go as well? Do they also, especially if Russ goes, do they get rid of DK Metcalf because he will be on his 4th year, and I think he's a 3rd-round pick, so I don't think they have the 5th-year option, so they'll have to give him an extension. But will he want an extension with no Russell Wilson there, or if whoever question, and they don't have the 1st-round pick this year, so I think a storm's coming. I know it rains on Seattle, and no pun intended, but a storm's coming, and I just enjoy this season of Russell. Because I think, and Pete Carroll, because I think this will be the last for a bit. I don't know if you have anything else to add there, but that's all I got for Seattle. I don't mean to. By the way, good one for Washington. You managed the game well. You did what solid defense. Unfortunate about the kick 2 return because I think that limited their kicking ability towards the end of the game. But credit the defense though on this one. They did their job. And so
Washington has had the worst luck with kickers. They had Chris Blewett, who blew it multiple times, missed many kicks. They cut him, signed Joey Sly. He had that kick blocked.
They had Dustin Hopkins for a hot minute, I think, at the beginning of the year, too.
Yeah, they've rotated kickers, just hasn't worked. And I think that was maybe like their 5th or 6th kick blocked on the year. Like they're getting a lot of kicks blocked. And then Joey Sly, their 3rd or so kicker on the year. I think on that return of the block kick, he pulled a muscle or something, and now he's supposed to miss 3 weeks.
Yeah,
they just had the worst luck in the kicking game.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes for them. They're kind of in the race 5-6, but Seattle's 3-8. So I'm sorry, but Seattle's done. So that's basically the point I was trying to say. They're not making the playoffs this year. If I'm Russell, and I know he's a competitor and such, but maybe start thinking about next year. But anyways, so that is the Week 12 reactions.